Greetings folks and welcome to a special orchestraltemplates.com video. I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. I'm Tobias from orchestraltemplates.com, where you'll find custom template solutions for working composers. During my template sessions, one side topic that always crops up is lower composing fees and how they affect us composers. In a nutshell, clients are cutting budgets left and right, so we earn less. While I don't have the perfect recipe on how to get better budgets, what I can hopefully do is help you keep as much as possible of what you make. This video is the first in a Business for Composers series, where I want to show you tools that help you to be financially stable and organized. Most of us are freelancers, doing composing either full-time or on the side as an additional source of income. Most of us also do not have big staff to pay monthly, do not have fancy multi-room recording facilities with a full-time accountant on site, and we are registered as small businesses. Still, we have taxable income, and we have business expenses, yet we usually do not have a very large degree of separation between personal finances and business finances. A lot in this video will apply to your personal finances as well, of course, but what I want to focus on is how to budget for your composing gigs, how to properly track all income and expenses, and how to be organized and conscious about your earnings and spendings with as little hassle as possible. Which leads me to the software methodology I want to share with you. You need a budget. Apart from the fact that, yes, you actually do need a budget, that also happens to be the name of the software and method. You need a budget, or YNAB as it is called, not to be confused with YNAB or YNAB, both of which are existential topics in their own right, is a web app that follows a certain set of rules and, who would have thought, helps you make a budget and stick to it. First of all, the usual disclaimer. I do not work for or am in any relationship with the company behind YNAB. I'm simply a user who has found the software to work amazingly well for my purposes as a composer and educator. I have posted a referral link in the description that will give both of us a free month of their service if you use it, but that's just an option for you if you like the video and the software and want to show your support. I am not paid by YNAB to make this video. In fact, they do not even know that I am making it. What is YNAB? YNAB's name, first of all, is a statement I believe to be true, namely that you need a budget. Why you do we'll discuss in a bit in all the gory detail. YNAB is also the method behind setting up said budget, made up of 4 rules. 1. Give every dollar a job, where dollar is of course your local currency. In my case that would be euro, but you'll do fine with pesos, yen, sickles or portions of Yorkshire pudding. 2. Embrace your true expenses, which is all about knowing and foreseeing which expenses you are having and planning for them accordingly. 3. Roll with the punches, which means being flexible and adapting your budget when unexpected things happen. 4. Age your money, which is not only semantically similar to fine wine, but also in practice. This is about having as much time between earning money and spending it, giving you freedom. And finally, YNAB is also the web and mobile app where you implement those 4 rules by making a budget. A little tangent, but isn't this way too personal advice for a guy who builds templates? You may think, why is that guy who builds templates trying to give me money advice? Aren't my finances the most sacred and private thing and have nothing to do with VE Pro? Of course your finances are sacred, but they do in fact have a lot to do with VE Pro. Not only because your workflow and your template will hopefully have a very beneficial effect on them. Like a template is a tool to optimize your workflow, a budget, and YNAB is a tool to optimize your money. Your actual personal finances, while undoubtedly of supreme importance and obviously greatly linked to your business as well, are not even really the topic here. You could be a young single person, or have a spouse and 5 kids. You may live on your own farm in the country, or in the middle of San Francisco. Quite different cost of living. And even the scope of your business changes things. After all, you might be a regular guy doing composing on the side. You might be a full-time professional composer. Or you might own a studio complex with an accountant, 5 assistants and 10 ghostwriters. Your financial demands will be very, very different for each of those cases. So we will not as much deal with specific numbers because those will be very different for everyone, but rather with a general method of how to make sure your composing business is running smoothly and on budget. So no worries, the template guy is not interested in your actual numbers. I just want to help you manage them. What is a budget anyway? The concept of a budget is pretty easy to grasp. Know your expenses and set aside money to cover them. Then see if you have money left, and if you do, budget that money for future spending. The idea is that you are never surprised by a bill and are always aware of what you will need to pay them. A budget also helps break up yearly or twice yearly payments into more manageable chunks that you can budget for. So, if budgeting is so easy, why are so few people doing it? The reason is that most people think having a budget, especially for personal spending, will limit them and will prevent them from spending money for things they want to do. While this thinking seems right at first glance, it could not be more wrong, because a well-made budget lets you know the money you have available at any time after figuring out all the current and coming expenses, plus unexpected things that might happen. Having a budget actually makes it easier to spend money when you want to, because you know what you have available to spend without going into debt. That's why I highly recommend having a budget for your personal finances too. But we are dealing with your business here. For your composing business, there are two major questions when it comes to financial stuff. How much does it earn you, and how much do you have in expenses? The budget lets you plan for these expenses and track their income, which is the first major use. The gap between income and expenses is your profit. Apart from being what puts additional bread on your table, it also determines how much you'll need to set aside for taxes, and that is the second big use of a YNAB budget. It lets you do most of the grunt work for tax returns, ready to give to your accountant or tax person. And because you do it on a regular basis, there's no need to frantically block 2 weeks full-time come tax season. An example budget. But enough with the boring theory. Let's jump in and make an example budget, so you can see how a bit of organization can give you peace of mind, prepare you much better for tax filings, and make sure your business is on a stable foundation. We'll call our composing hustle to compose or not compose Inc. Give it a currency, although we'll use fantasy values because income and expenses vary wildly between areas, and choose a date format. YNAB now takes us to the budget section, where a bunch of standard categories and subcategories have already been created for our budgeting pleasure. Only that these are targeted at personal use, so we'll have to delete a lot and add some as well. Before we dive into setting this up, but after briefly marveling at how pure and pristine the reports look with nothing in them, we have to add our accounts. Accounts are everything where actual money is held and used, be it cash, bank accounts, credit cards, as well as assets like investments. YNAB lets you connect directly to financial institutions if you are in the US or Canada, but there is much to be said for managing your accounts manually, as it gives you the best control and flexibility. We will keep it nice and simple and assume that you have a business bank account, a business savings account, a business credit card, and a bit of cash. Of course, you'll also have personal accounts, and most likely you will pay yourself to one of these from your business account. But as far as our budget is concerned, these payouts are business expenses from a business account too, so these personal accounts have no place in this budget. If that sounds confusing right now, no worries, we'll deal with all that in detail later. So, let's create these accounts with their respective starting balances. We'll give ourselves a bit of money in our bank account, some savings, a bit of outstanding stuff on our credit card, and a bit of cash for paying the pizza guy. Ta-da! 4 shiny new accounts with their starting balances. Back to the budget. Now, let's retool those budget categories. A category is nothing more than a place where you virtually stash money to be spent later. $10 for printer paper, out of the office category. $3 for paper clips, no, not that paperclip, also from the office category, and so on. We do not need a bunch of those example categories, so snip, let's remove them. Onto our own new ones. You'll notice that a few of the existing categories are left. This is because these also apply to your company. Let's go through them and add new ones as we go. The immediate obligations category should hold all the stuff you have to pay, probably each month, or at least at fixed intervals. These are rent for the studio, possibly payable to yourself if your company rents a room from you as a private person, electricity, water, maybe heating and your internet, phone contract. If possible, have these separate from your personal contracts, or at least set a clear percentage to make it easier for tax season. The very general fees category we'll use to lump together any other monthly thing you always have to pay. True expenses are, well, true expenses. The stuff you spend money for. I personally prefer to have this more finely grained and separate into more categories, but to keep it simple, we'll stick with the one here. Just add a bunch of categories that should make sense for a composing business. Stuff I forgot to budget for is a very important category. Remember Rule 3? Roll with the punches? This is part of what this is for. At the beginning you'll have forgotten to budget for a ton of stuff. That society membership that you completely forgot when going over regular expenses, a new rack for your studio door. It happens, and it is okay. If you always budget a bit for stuff you've forgotten to budget for, you actually did budget for it. Sounds weird, but true. For every category where you always have fixed expenses or where you want to reserve a specific amount of money each month, it makes sense to work with goals. A goal here says to always have $400 for rent each month, for example. For composer-specific budgets, we will add 3 categories for use in our example transactions later. Sample libraries, which will fund all the nice libraries we like to buy, and where we want to reserve $150 per month. Pitching, which funds stuff like inviting a director for coffee at $80 per month. And law insurance for when people think they have to sue us. We'll deal with that category's goal later. We'll cut the list short here. When you make your budget, just enter all the categories you think you'll need. You can add new ones at any time. Income. Uncle Scrooge would be happy, because now we will deal with your precious money. YNAB and any good budget is based on the premise that you budget what you have. You cannot budget what you do not have, because it is not there to budget. Our accounts show a bit of plus, which shows up as to be budgeted at the top. Note that this amount is already figured in the balance on the credit card. This is the money you have available to budget right now, so let's do that. I will use relatively random numbers for the budget values in this example, simply because the real values will be vastly different for any one of you. For the immediate obligations, you will generally have a fixed monthly rent, a fixed installment on electricity, and so on. Let's put these in. For the other categories, we'll budget an amount that should cover all the expenses in that category for the month, plus a bit for stuff I forgot to budget for. We will pretend it is the middle of the month, so we'll have some income later that month. And that is necessary, because we are running out of money fast, as you can see. Spending money. Now that we have a budget for this month and know what we estimate we will need to spend, let's do exactly that. We set aside money for the categories, and when an expense happens, the amount gets taken from that category. Remember our 3 composer-centric example categories? We'll have a transaction in all of them this month, and I want to show you why having a budget is so nice. Sample libraries. There's that new Epic Bagpipes library out there that fits your new project perfectly. And at only $49, it is quite affordable. But there's also that new solo strings thing out, and at $249 that is not as easy on the wallet. We have budgeted $150 for this category, so if the bagpipes work for your new Loch Ness documentary, go for it. We pay this from our credit card. Include a bit of info in the memo field, which helps a lot when preparing taxes, and confirm. Note that the transaction still waits to be cleared. Clear a transaction when it actually shows up on your credit card or account. This is a pretty good way to make sure that all charges are correct. Looking at the budget now, you can see that the $49 were deducted from the sample libraries category. Because we paid with credit card, they are not simply gone, but now appear as a positive value in the credit card category. The money that was in sample libraries before now has a new job, paying off your CC at the end of the month. This way of accounting makes sure that you only put money on your credit card that you actually have, thus escaping or not falling into the credit card float. The credit card float is when you have to use this month's income to just pay off your credit card and have no more money left to allocate. You are in debt without even realizing it. So now we have the bagpipes, but what about the strings? Your budget helps you there too. We have $100 left in the sample libraries category. The library is $249, so assuming next month you're also planning to have $150 as your goal, you can actually afford it next month while staying in your budget. But what if you want it now and you want it all? Then you follow rule 3, which is to roll with the punches. You need to get the cash from another category and do what YNABers call whack-a-mole, namely try to scrape it together from wherever you can, if you really think you need that library now. Or you can leave your budget in peace and get it next month. Hint, you'll find that over time not having to whack-a-mole will become a game in itself, and you'll willingly wait for a month. Budget for the win. On to pitching. There's that new horror short where a serial killer stalks his prey at a tea room, so naturally you'll invite the director for a cup of brew to get her to sign you as a composer. Train into town is $10, there and back again, the actual tea plus something to munch on, $25. Makes $35 that go out of that category. Don't forget to save the receipts, these are business expenses. So far, so good. But now the law insurance for your composing company is due, and it is $500. You can now pray to whatever supernatural being you hold dear, and it is perfectly fine to do so, but you still need to pay. Enter the transaction, and our category glows bright red. So you do what people do, and that is transfer a bit more money from your personal account. Now you can pay it, but you curse yourself for again forgetting, like every year, that this giant bill is due this month. What makes these yearly expenses so scary is that they are big and mean that you need far more money this month than in the other month. Goals to the rescue. Set a goal to have your $500 by this time next year, and YNAB will automatically ask you to set aside the correct amount each month, thus splitting the big expense into 12 smaller ones. You can and should do this for all expenses that recur after a set period of month. Very often you can use it to your advantage. By paying yearly, a lot of insurances will give you a better rate. Set a goal for the yearly amount and you are paying less, while still having the ease of having 12 smaller budget items. In the same way, you should focus on building a little emergency fund for very unexpected act of God type expenses. You know how your main machine has a habit of breaking right in the middle of a big project and you need a costly repair right now. If you save a bit of money each month through a studio emergency fund, you'll have a much easier time dealing with these situations. It should be common sense to make sure you can keep going when little calamities strike, but a lot of people seem to be completely unprepared for when the proverbial fecal matter impacts the rotary oscillator, and it throws them into big trouble. Just like you need backups to keep working when something breaks, you also need to have the financial reserves to pay for repairs or replacements when your business depends on it. Incoming money. On to nicer things. You've got the tea-drinking serial killer movie gig, and after many sleepless nights and cups of tea, the director has approved your score and paid you. Incoming money in YNAB always goes to be budgeted, and once there, it gets budgeted. You should always budget to zero, so every single bug has a job. Right now we have no categories that urgently need anything, so there's two options. You could pad the sample libraries category and get that solo strings library right now, or you could put the hard-earned money into your studio maintenance category, because truth be told, doesn't that AC really need a good service? Or maybe you can budget a bit to both. Where to budget your dough is all about your priorities. A budget frees you to spend money for what you truly need, save money you can save, and just in general be mindful about your finances. Or maybe you have no urgent business spending at all right now, so you can afford to pay yourself for a change. If you are smart about separating business and personal finances, you have a personal bank account. Paying yourself is as easy as making an outgoing transaction, but the payee is your personal account. The money is gone from your business account, and in YNAB it looks like any other expense, because it is. You as a company pay the salary to an employee, yourself. Treating these transfers like any other expense makes sure your books are in order and business and personal are neatly separated. The taxman cometh, or the tax lady. Sometime after the new year, you'll need to do your taxes, or maybe if you have a big business as opposed to the small business as a legal entity, you need to do it every quarter or every month. No matter when, your budget will be an asset. It holds all your incoming transactions and all your expenses. And if you have used the memo field properly, it will already hold invoice numbers and other important information. YNAB can export all this data, ready to be sent to your accountant or tax person. Attach invoices and receipts and they will have most of what they need to do your taxes. Because your whole income and expenses are tracked every day of the year, you can also see how you're doing in terms of income versus expenses, and you can buy tons of useless gear on December 31st to avoid paying income tax. Speaking of tax, once you make the transition from small business to quote-unquote normal business, where I live that's up to a revenue of 17,000 something euro, things get complicated. Not only do I strongly recommend getting a good tax guy or gal at this point at the latest, but you'll also possibly need to figure in VAT on all your invoices in addition to the income tax. Here in Germany, that's 19%. There are situations where that tax does not apply, VAT IDs, some non-profits, and so on come to mind, but that is a topic for another day. For now, we want to be on the safe side in our budget. To not be shocked when the tax office wants some of your income back, as soon as you have even the slightest inkling that you might be liable to paying VAT this year, make a category for it and make it a routine to always transfer a bit of your income to it. That category is sacred and must not be touched. No whack-a-moling from it. If fortune shines on you and it turns out that you don't owe Uncle Sam or your local country persona as much as you feared, good for you. Save it for next year or move the cash to another category after you are 100% sure no further tax bills will fly in. By the way, even if you do not need to pay VAT, still have such a category for income tax and put whatever percent your tax bracket is of every payment you receive into it. A whole new month, a new fantastic stash of dough. The month is over and thanks to your budget, you've managed to keep your finances in order. The new month not only brings the usual monthly expenses, but also a chance to look at what happens to money left in categories. In our sample libraries category, we had budgeted $150 last month, but only spent $49. 101 have carried over from the last month. If we budget the goal this month, 150 as before, we now have 251 at our disposal. Here's that solo strings library. This effect is the true power of budgeting, because by not spending money, you can build up your categories so you have money available when you really need or want to spend it. After a while, your age of money will go up. Age of money is the time that passes from earning something to spending it. As soon as your age of money is 30 days or more, you have broken what is called the paycheck to paycheck cycle, where your whole pay for this month is needed to fund the next month. At 30 days age of money, this month's income can fund the month after the next. Of course, even if you are employed somewhere, this is great, because it gives you better security. But it is beyond awesome as a freelancer, because it means that you have a certain buffer for when the dry spell hits. But all that budgeting is so much work. No, it actually isn't. Not compared to asking yourself, can I afford that, and then panicking when looking at the big zero on your bank account. If you always enter all transactions meticulously, you can save a lot of time for tax preparations. YNAB also has a really great mobile app that lets you do almost everything the web interface does. There's actually an age of money graph that's not even in the web interface. There's also an Apple Watch app that lists all the category balances, which is very useful when you need to check whether or not you can or should make a particular purchase. For example, when debating whether you need that watch in the first place. Try it out. YNAB has a 30 days demo, and it is extremely likely that you'll save enough time and money in the first month to multiple times pay for the cost of the subscription. One last side note to those of you who had already heard of YNAB prior to watching this video. You may have been told that the method and software is mainly for people who are in over their head in credit card debt. The company indeed heavily markets it as such, but that is actually not entirely true. These people need to work on reducing their debt first and foremost. And while YNAB does a terrific job at that, it basically boils down to spend money to get rid of your debt instead of acquiring new debt. Basically any money method will work for that. I truly feel YNAB really comes into its own when used by people without big debt, because then the freedom of having a budget and knowing when you can afford to spend money and when you should hold off really kicks in. If you are deep into debt, the answer to should I spend that money will almost always be no. So it is easy to see why these people feel they are in a straitjacket when having to stick to a budget. I hope you liked our little budgeting adventure and have seen how it can help you make the best out of your composing hustle. Make sure to hit that like button if you did. Let me know your thoughts and wishes in the comments, and of course I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Make sure to stop by orchestraltemplates.com for more templatey goodness. Take care and see you soon.